Welcome back, everyone. I'm Dr. Dennis Becker, and you'll be hearing the voice of my colleague, Robin Galinsky, very soon. And you know who we are. We are the masters of manipulation. Well, let's change that a little bit. That's our topic, manipulation. We're really masters of how you protect yourself from being manipulated. That's why we're here. Each time you hear us, each episode is dedicated to helping you figure out a way to protect yourself from being manipulated. That's why we're here. So we're delighted that you're here with us. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. Actually, Robin, why don't you introduce us? What are we talking about today? What's the topic?
Today's topic is curiosity. Curiosity is
What does that mean? I'm, I'm only curious.
curiosity is a
That was good, right?
no, that was annoying, but I'll let it
Oh,
slide.
okay.
I'll let it slide. Curiosity, you're rattling me, making me lose my train of thought. So curiosity is something that is innate in human beings. It is varying degrees within a human being. And it is something that is a critical skill for you to develop for self-protection. We also want to talk about the flip side of that, maybe the last 10 minutes, Dennis, about how a manipulator uses their curiosity to manipulate. But let's focus on the self-protective aspect of this. And curiosity is a good thing. Often in our society, it's framed as a bad thing or an annoying thing. And yeah, anybody who's been asked why over and over again can get annoyed, but really you should be able to answer that. You should be able to answer that, period, right? The question why. I should, strong word, you know what I mean? There's probably an answer for it. You can go deeper, deeper, deeper. Why is the grass green? Why does the grass grow? And you can go deeper and deeper and find the answers. Now, how this works conversationally is very different. A lot of times the manipulator banks on your lack of curiosity. So in other words, they'll say two different things. They don't align. They kind of fudge them together. And they try to make you think they're both equally important or they're related to one another when they're not. And if you're really listening carefully, you most likely have an inkling that something's not quite right. But depending on your level of curiosity, whether you want to know more or you don't. Let me just pause there. See what you think about that, Dennis.
Well, you know what makes me remember is the three things that we suggest everybody be to be protected from manipulation: be curious, have courage, and ask questions. So you're talking about the first part of that, curiosity. So you're suggesting that it will be helpful for people to be curious when they hear things that are like, what? They don't know what that means, or it sounds odd to them. Are you suggesting that that's a good time to ask a question and not be fearful that it will sound too silly? Is that what you mean?
Yes, and I also think, just generally speaking, you and I talk a lot about mindset. Growing your mind, making yourself develop a curious mindset. So rather than have your face down on your phone, passively just taking in whatever the algorithm sends you to next, pay attention to what's going on around you. And right now, I'm curious about why the mailman parked there. And also what's in the package he's carrying. And is this the time he normally comes every day? So allowing yourself to be curious about anything and everything, if you're someone who's been more on the spectrum where you've gone through life just accepting things. I'm amazed at what a lack of curiosity there is in the world now. And I really do believe it's come from the smartphones and the overdependence on smartphones. But
Before you go to smartphones, which is the new technology, let me go back to a word.
Well, I wasn't going to talk about smartphones. I was just going to say,
but you said a word. You said a word a moment ago that I thought was really curious. Well, I didn't mean it that way. Really interesting. You said allow yourself. to have a curious mind. Allow yourself to ask questions. Now, it seems to me that there are some people who are, shall we say, naturally more curious, who are
Yes.
naturally more, let's change the word, more interested in things, maybe change it again, maybe naturally more want to learn more. It's a natural thing for them. But you said allow yourself. Does that mean you can cause yourself? You can change, you can cause yourself to be curious and by allowing? Give me a little explanation of what you
I'm
meant.
so glad you said that because yes, I think this natural curiosity that's there from a child gets pushed down, it gets admonished, it gets punished oftentimes. Here's an example. It just popped in my head. I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and my great aunt Betty took us to the beach, and she had these dark purple broken veins on her thigh, and I was fascinated by them. I thought they looked really cool, but I said, "Why do you have those purple lines on your leg?" And she snapped at me. And she said, "That's none of your business. You shouldn't ask that." This is how curiosity gets shut down.
Mm,
So all I knew as a child was, oh, that was bad. I did something wrong, but I don't know what I did wrong because
hmm
children just do that. My daughter
hmm
pointed at a black person and said, "Why is he black?" My kids have pointed at fat people and say, "Why are they fat?" Completely innocent.
hmm
Just sheer, pure curiosity. That's
hmm
all it is. But
hmm
it quickly becomes punished in our society, and I think even more so now with the marketing and the slick and the advertising and act now, the sense of urgency. We've talked about that,
hmm
creating the
Yeah.
sense of urgency. That's
Yeah.
to shut the curious questions down.
hmm
You know, the
hmm
person who pushes through and says, "Well, what do you mean by subscription? And how do I cancel the subscription? And how much friction is involved with canceling the subscription?" Oh, it's very easy. It's very easy. You just click and clack, right? Yeah. And you're done and done. No. And then you find out, no, you have to have a written letter by this date, or they bill you again for the next month, or, and then you find out all this friction. So the curiosity is so gone in our society that even when you bring your curious questions, you'll either be met with just frustration and impatience from the person you're asking, indignance, like you don't have a right to the information, or they'll make it seem like there's something wrong with you.
hmm
I've had 1,000 people through here, and no one's ever asked me that question, like something's wrong with you. You're like,
hmm Yeah.
none of this should deter you. And when
hmm
it comes to manipulation, we always talk about the odd things, the odd, off topic, seems to come from nowhere kind of things that they like to just insert into a conversation. First thing that you need to think in your head is why? Why are they asking that question? Why are they asking it now? Why are they using those words? Why are they using that tone? I mean, all of these can float in your head like clouds. It's not necessarily going to get the answer to everything, but asking in your mind the mindset of why. Why do we have to stand in this line? Why can't we just go right there? Why do I have to wait at Starbucks when I order a black coffee? Why do I have to wait for everybody's whipped cappuccino, little dash of caramel sauce, 50-minute wait when you can turn around behind you and pour my coffee?
Yeah, that's a different thing. I think that's a different thing. That's learning about patience and understanding of how the process works and all that sort of stuff.
No,
But
but there are people that don't think behind the counter and say, "You're right.
well,
You
well,
shouldn't have to wait. I'm
but
going to
that's
pour it for you right now."
but that's what manipulators base everything on. Not everything, but almost everything on that your sense of curiosity uh, is not strong enough or clear enough
They
to
bank on it.
prevent you from being for feeling that you're going to be self humiliated or embarrassed
That's
So they're
right.
working on almost the emotion of embarrassment or shyness.
That's
And they're
right.
hoping that your curiosity is not stronger than that. Because if it is, you'll say, why do I have to this? Or why do they do that? No, they don't want you to do that. They want you to just feel, oh, I don't want to do that. That's too stupid. Or I'll be the dumb one. No, they don't want that. So they don't want you to be curious. Is that right?
Oh, right. They don't, well, until they do.
What do you
Okay.
mean? What do you mean?
Well, yeah, because now these things are bubbling up my mind. So, um, we talk about orchestrating, so using the environment or something. So with my ex-husband, after the, separation, the divorce, whatever, he would play games where he would put something there, hoping that I would be curious about it, or my kids would. So he would orchestrate a call to come in from one of my family members who he knew that I'd be upset if he was talking to them. So he had that call come in with his phone face up. So the daughter he was with would see it and then come running to me and say, "Oh my God, do you know what so and so called?" So that's where they want you to be curious and a little bit nosy. They want you to look at or maybe they hold their phone and they just start laughing and texting because they want
Mm-hmm.
your imagination and your curiosity to run wild.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not talking about when they're using it as a tactic, because they do that. They'll be cryptic or ambiguous so that you will say, whose shoes are those in the back seat?
Yeah. Yeah, that's playing on your curiosity. See, it's like we said before, it's conflation. There's a couple of things that you just said. It's conflating things like orchestration. They planned a certain thing to go this certain way, and they conflate it with asking you a question that they know is going to be embarrassing. And they conflate that with when it's being asked, maybe in front of other people where you couldn't say other things. So they may put two or three tactics together, knowing that your curiosity is not going to be strong enough to cut through all of that and to ask a question about it for clarification.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That's why I was thinking that we just devote an episode to curiosity, because it's so complex, because it's a tool that can be used against you, and it's a tool that can very much work in your favor as well.
That's
But
why I said earlier too, I was saying that the word curious, it's sometimes in some ways could be substituted by interested or learning. Uh, Maybe they are forms of curiosity. Maybe that's what curiosity drives. You're curious enough to want to learn something. Uh, and then it brings me to the thought of these days, contemporary society, curiosity is, well, it could go either way. Let's try this, is not being encouraged because as a young person, at any age, but particularly with young people where brains are still forming, you're not curious enough to pursue the course of knowledge, wanting to learn. Why? Because all you had to do is click on something and boom, it's there for you.
exactly. That's right. It's what
It's
I,
all there for you. You don't
yeah,
have to be curious. All you have to know is I'm curious enough to know which button do I
and
push.
get
You push that button and
instant.
you got it.
Yeah.
So your curiosity these days, in contemporary society, wherever you're hearing this, but in our contemporary society, we're not really, and this is too strong a word, but we're not really teaching about curiosity. We're causing it, but then boom, we immediately shut it down by providing the answer to it.
Yeah. I don't know if we're causing it, because there's so much
Well, it's
passive.
caused by, you say, look at are you kidding? Advertising says so many things in so many different ways. And you this, if you do that, and you say, this will do, you say, oh, really? Now that means I'm curious. Oh, really? I want to know more. It seems like
Oh,
I want to
right.
know more.
Yes. The
And then,
hook,
boom,
the
you want to
hook.
know more?
Yeah.
Click that button. Boom, you got
Yeah.
it.
Right.
That's
Right.
what I
Right.
mean.
Yeah. So that's where curiosity is used as a manipulative tactic. And I
Yeah.
was even thinking about a sales, high pressured sales, the manipulative kind of sales. They may set you up so they know the question you're going to ask. They set you up to ask the question so they can answer it. So trying to think of a good example of that. But whenever I think of this, Dennis, I think of Munchausen's, right? Like they can create the pain point so they can then be the superhero
Yeah.
and rescue you with the solution. But they
Classic manipulators tactic we know.
yes, but they manipulate you. So this is like a sales tactic where they manipulate you into asking the question so you feel as though you are being curious or you're being a critical thinker or you're advocating for yourself. But really, they manipulated the whole conversation just to get you to that point, and they knew full well what you were going to ask because of the way they set you up.
Oh, of course, there's a couple of sales techniques. We won't go into that right now, but there's a couple. The most famous one, of course, is once they've given you all the explanation and all the blah, blah, blah about it, now they say to you, which color would you like it in? Red or blue?
Alternative clothes, yeah.
Whichever one you say, that's the one you got. So they
Yep.
lead you to that. Are you really being curious? Not curious. You're being selective. They can call it selective. So yeah, that's an offshoot of curiosity. But the way that manipulators use it is, I think, much more devious. And I'm sad to say it. I want to go back to this quickly, but I'm sad to say that we're not helping young people or any people of any age to develop, to refine the sense of curiosity these days. We're giving too much information too fast and too easily so that you don't have to be curious about anything. I think that's sad.
Well, the problem with it is it's curated information. So it's not, if it were free information, now what I mean by free is like, I remember as a kid going in the library and going to the research desk and getting the encyclopedia or getting the book and then reading it. And it would oftentimes create more questions. And you'd have more questions and you would get lost in it. This, unfortunately, with the phone, you can have your curiosity satisfied about something, but instead of getting lost in more educative, critical thinking, it's always leading you down the path of something to subscribe to or something to buy. It's all based on the pull of consumerism.
Yeah,
So
manipulation. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's not going to invoke, well, sharp critical thinking skills. One of the ways you can develop them is by asking why. Why do I have to act right now? Why do you only have 3 seats left? I checked an hour ago and you had,
I'm going to
6
give it.
seats left or
I want to put
whatever.
it. I want to put a different word onto this curiosity thing, and the word I'm thinking about is how. Now, what makes me think about this is in the days of, because I've been critical for the last few minutes, I've been critical about contemporary society and the way that we're shutting down curiosity. By push a button and you got the answer. Okay, now wait a minute. Let's look at that a different way. In the days when, and our older listeners will remember, the days when we had only radio, we had no TV, only radio. You tune into the radio and you'd listen every Thursday night at 8 o'clock or something. And what would you hear? You'd hear the Lone Ranger. Okay. Now, you would hear the story, but you had to visualize what the Lone Ranger looked like. You could hear horse beats clopping and clipping, clopping and clipping, but you had to visualize what would a horse, did the Lone Ranger wear a hat? Was it a white hat, a mask? Okay, so we had to be curious about, if you wanted to really get into the story, and there were all kinds of detective stories and comedy shows, if you want to get into it, you had to be curious enough to create in your own mind what the Lone Ranger looked like. Then along came television. Okay, now I don't have to be curious anymore because they're telling me what he looks like. I see a horse and a hat, white hat and a mask and all that. So that, I think that sort of was the beginning of the lack of curiosity. Now, then you had color television. That was even more real. You don't even have to wonder what color is that vest. No, now they know. They had even more, less curiosity. Now, this is where I'm going to turn the page. I'm thinking that rather than destroying the sense of curiosity in the way that we live in this current society, I'm happy to say that you, Robin Galinsky, and me, Dr. Dennis Becker, are bringing back curiosity, as is everyone who is producing podcasts. Now, why? What makes me
That's
say that?
true.
Because a podcast is basically radio.
Yep.
It's listening to it.
Full circle moment.
You don't have to have a big box to tune in with one big round station in the middle. No, you could hear it on your phone. You can hear it in the car. You can hear it on the beach. You don't have to be plugged in anywhere. Podcasts are basically radio, which was such a creative medium for helping people develop curiosity. Now, for those of you who have never seen any of our videos, Robin and I, if you've never seen one of our videos, you don't know how tall I am. You don't know what color hair Robin has. You don't know whether we're broadcasting from a studio or our home. You don't know. You have to be curious. Maybe more important, you have to be interested in the topic. Not as curious about those things, more curious about the topic that we're talking about. So I'm suggesting that podcasts are, in fact, helping people retain, if not develop a little bit better, curiosity.
So I would agree with you. And to go back to our manipulator, the we talk about being courageous with your curiosity, because when I said you'll be shut down, admonished, made fun of, you'll be made to feel like you're a nudge, you're nosy, you're wasting time. There's so many ways in
Mhm.
which you can be made feel bad about your curiosity, but
Mhm.
for self-protective reasons, you want to keep your foot on the gas pedal of your curiosity.
Mhm.
When things don't make sense, when they don't line up, and you know what this feels like, you get this feeling. And typically, what'll happen is the same thing that happens in the sales cycle where they create a sense of urgency. Your manipulator will create a sense of urgency. All of a sudden, well, I don't have time to explain it to you.
Mhm.
I don't, we just have to do it right now. I
Mhm.
know you want to know
Mhm.
all the reasons why, and this is when you have to be very courageous, or at least note to yourself, okay,
Mhm. Mhm.
yes, it's happening. It's
Yeah.
happening right now. It's
Mhm.
happening because there's no reason we can't take the time to answer my question about, why we're driving the blue car, not the red car, or whatever it is.
Well, the manipulator always has reasons, so they may not be
Mhm.
true because remember, they don't care about the truth.
Well,
So they could
right,
lie to
that's
you.
true, Dennis, but sometimes they don't expect the curiosity.
Yeah, of
So
course.
they stumble and fumble, and that's where
Yes.
you'll see them use another tactic like intimidation,
Yeah.
or blaming, or something that to shut you up. So
And
if
let me
they
tell
don't have a prepared answer because for whatever reason, because they didn't
Mhm.
expect you to be curious,
Now, as
then
we've talked,
this is happening. And
just
then,
as
well,
we,
wait a minute, let me address the other thing where they do have the prepared answer. When they do have the prepared answer because they're asking you to sign a contract or do something that they know you're going to ask questions, and they're prepared with their slick answer, that should incite more curiosity, because when they give you their answer, you're going to have a feeling of something's not adding up, or the answer was just a little too pat, or a little too rehearsed, or a
Mhm.
little too, right there at the ready. So
Mhm.
that should get the spidey sense going. Anyway,
Mhm.
go ahead, Dennis.
Well, that ties in perfectly, but with the technique that we've said many times in different episodes on different tactics, CCQ, curious, courageous, and question. So if it doesn't sound quite right or something similar or something off about that, your curiosity is spiked. Wait a minute, that's the curiosity. The courage is then to speak up. And what does that mean? It means ask a question. Have the courage to ask a question that helps to satisfy your curiosity. And that often leads
Well,
to an answer that it's going to stir even more questions. That's why a little kid
well,
says, why, why? Not easy. It won't be easy for your manipulator either.
I don't think the manipulator's ever going to satisfy your curiosity
No,
because the
right.
reasons are nefarious. So you're not going to get satisfaction. What you're going to get, though, is what you're going to do, not get, what you're going to do is put the manipulator on notice that you're paying attention and
Yeah.
you realize the manipulation is taking
Oh,
place.
that's one of the worst things you can do to manipulator. Oh, pay
That's what
attention.
curiosity does.
Oh,
Yes.
be
And you
aware.
you need your full attention to be curious.
Yes, you do.
Your
Yeah.
full attention. You cannot
And
be
you
distracted.
and I'm going to say it again, you need the courage to act upon that curiosity.
That's
Don't
right.
listen. If you're with someone, you're in a relationship with someone that you suspect makes you is a manipulator, makes you feel uncomfortable, just sort of strange, odd things. Don't know where they come from, but if they make you feel uncomfortable, chances are you're dealing with a manipulator in some way. And just by the very fact that you're curious about that, we're urging you, should give you the courage to ask a question about those things that make you uncomfortable, that seem strange.
And you can fact check. So if you're early on in a manipulative relationship where you're not sure whether they're manipulators or not, take one thing. Take a
Yeah.
story they told you. You know, they're running late because Starbucks ran, I'm back to Starbucks, because Starbucks ran out of coffee beans. Oh, really? Which Starbucks did you go to? Oh, the one over there. Then when you have a chance, circle back to that Starbucks and say, "Hey, yesterday morning at 9:30, did you guys run out of coffee beans?" Just because that's curiosity too. So you're not confronting the manipulator directly, you're just fact checking
Yeah.
something they said, because even if it's a, so they often delight in little, constant little lies all the time. That's very, very fun for them. They feel like they are so much smarter than everybody else, that that makes them feel superior to everybody else, because, oh, she's so dumb, I just tell her whatever and she just believes me. They don't even need to, they lie about things they don't even need to lie about,
Yeah. Right.
just to get the payoff of
Right.
knowing they're running the board, they're running the show.
Mhm.
So fact check them, use that curious angle.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, some time ago we did an episode about something called gish galloping. Gish galloping. It's such a strange term, but it means when people talk very fast and they say four or five or six or seven things in a row, perhaps on the same breath. Manipulators like to do this because they know that you can't fact check everything that they've said. And then because you can't, and if you fact check one of them, they'll go to the other four or five and keep it going. This is a technique that politicians use it a lot, but manipulators will often use this. It's a strange name, Gish galloping. It comes from a long time ago, a guy named Gish who created a technique for speaking and so forth. That's not important. The fact is that you may have a manipulator who does it to you. So if you're getting 4, 5, 16, 7 in the same almost the same sentence,
Oh,
it's not
Dennis.
possible to fact check one. But even if you do, they'll go on with the other, the other, the other. But fact checking is a very strong technique for you to help defend yourself. If you do that often enough, you know what? They'll stop doing it to you because they
I
know
feel
that you're going
bad
to
because
catch
I
them.
think I do this all the time,
Well,
don't I?
I think it's time to sign off now, folks.
No, I don't do it to be manipulative. I do it in the sense of, okay, you need to make sure that pot goes in that cupboard, and whatever you do when you back my car, I do the
mm-hmm. And if I say something, what about the pot? What do you mean the pot? I told you. Look, did you hear anything I said about the car? What about?
oh, my gish
Okay.
galloper. What can I say? I don't remember that word or an episode about gish
Oh,
galloping, but
yeah,
if you
gish
say so,
galloping. Yeah. But it's
I,
a technique that you're manipulating. You may know it, folks, because you may not know that name, but you'll know it because you've been a target of that sort of a thing. People doing 4 or 5 or 6 things in one breath, then expecting you to remember all of them, or whichever one you question on. They say, why are you asking about that? Didn't I just tell you about that? Oh, okay. Because they don't want you to be curious.
no, they just want you to do what they're
Just do
telling
what
you
I say. Exactly right. It's about control, folks. It's
to.
all about control. It's been a wide circle, but here we are back again to manipulative control.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, that was our topic today.
That is our topic for today, and it's a lot to think about, because it can go either way. But think about where, in small ways, you can expand your curiosity. Give yourself permission to be curious. If somebody is shutting down your curiosity, know that means
Mm,
something
yeah.
else.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
nobody should be doing that. I mean, I understand if somebody's speaking in front of a group of 1,000 people and they have a 15-minute presentation and somebody keeps raising their hand. I mean, not talking about a situation like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
where somebody has to control the time in the room and facilitate.
But you know when you're being in the presence of a manipulator, sometimes, and after a while, you know it every time because you get that constant feeling of what the, geez, this is so strange. You're uncomfortable. That's a great sign that
Yeah.
somewhere in your presence there's a manipulator.
Mhm.
CCQ. Be curious. Have the courage to ask a question about it. That's what are talking about today. That was our topic today. So before we leave you, Robin, would you let folks know a little bit about how they can get in touch with us and how they can hear us again in other episodes?
They can find us at Outwit in Real Time. As far as finding us, the best place to do is subscribe to that site. But we usually live stream out to LinkedIn and our Facebook page, which is Outwitting the Manipulator. And we also have a YouTube channel you can find by putting Outwitting the Manipulator in YouTube. So that, and this podcast, you've already found us if you're listening to this now and probably on the podcast. So please like and rate and review our podcast because we need people to do that. And that's it, Dennis.
It is it. Thank you very much, because that big old clock on the wall tells us it's time for us to leave for this episode. So be curious enough to find us next time, won't you please? Until then, for my colleague Robin Galinsky, that other voice that you heard there, I'm Dr. Dennis Becker. Thanks for being with us. Bye for now.